Welcome, everybody. It's your Sunday edition of The Expendable Show. I'm your host, The Expendable. So, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not real sure I remember this weekend. It's been one of those weekends. So, it all started with Saturday. I had my granddaughter's birthday party. She's 1, so I went to that, which was awesome. We had a great time. And then, I ended up going to the Georgia Ole Miss game, and we walked around to Athens, Georgia, like all day. Then we went and ate some food, and that was quite the time. And then I just got back from watching the Indianapolis Colts play. I forget who we were playing, but hey, there's Rachel. She's here. But the Colts are beating the Chargers really bad. My Colts were actually having a good year, so that's good. But it was a wild weekend for sure, and a good time. And so, if you like my show, like and subscribe and ding the bell. This episode is brought to you by Gatsby Trading Solutions. And let's get into our statistics as we do every week. So on the debt clock, we're at the Doge debt clock. We're at $676 billion, which is, we've now gone over $6,000 per taxpayer. That's good. We like that. Mortgage rates kind of stayed at 5.99%. We're still way below Joe Biden, 6.7% from 2024. Trump's approval rate, it stayed exactly the same, actually. So we're at 45.4. And on Friday, the Dow Jones closed at 46,190. So there we go. That's where we're at. The Democrat Party's approval rating is still at a sub-abysmal 33.6%. My dog came in, check up on me, make sure I'm alive. So today we pretty much only have like 2 subjects we're going to talk about today, but they're long and drawn out. So I'm going to take my time and get through them. For those of you, and I know I have a lot more followers recently, so I'm going to kind of let you guys know how this goes. So I do. It's a little bit different if you all came over from my TikTok page where I just get on there and yell and get mad at stuff. I do a lot more research for this and try to kind of create the education and explain what is actually happening with things. And for those of you who don't know, I'm on the Republic a lot, which is a 24-hour news outlet, which is like the India equivalent to Fox News. And so international policy is kind of like my specialty. I spend a lot of time on international policy. So everything that I do for like Kentucky and stuff is like extra bonus work for me, like when I'm not doing anything. So what we're going to talk about today, the first subject is going to be the No Kings protest. So for those of you who know, I know, so I'm not a big protester. I don't protest. I don't join groups. I don't do that kind of thing. I'm kind of a lone wolf. I don't need to be, I'm not a pack animal. But I'm not saying that protests are bad. I'm just saying it's not my cup of tea. I'd rather be off doing my own thing. So I do see like causes like what's going on down in London, Kentucky, like the Doug Harless thing. I think a lot of people need to be vocal about that. It's obviously a big touchy situation. And we're seeing more and more like come out like in Paris, Kentucky, and in Pike County, Kentucky, more things happening there. We had protesting here in Atlanta. When I was in Athens yesterday, I saw some people walking around with No King stickers on. So I tried to, just ignore it. So I went through and I was like, okay, so what are these people actually claiming to protest? Because to me, No Kings just says, well, but Donald Trump bad. It's like that's like the left excuse for everything is Donald Trump bad. And so I did a lot of looking into and like seeing what some of the protesters were saying that they were actually protesting against. So this one person said, because I'm an American, I learned from history, unlike a lot of other people in this country. History repeats itself. Now, that person who says their name is Ed, they're referring to Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. So they're trying to draw the inference that all the patterns are there, that Donald Trump is the next coming of Adolf Hitler. Obviously, if you pay enough attention to Donald Trump, he's done more to, give more freedom than anything. He's done more to promote mass capitalism than anybody. So that the narrative there doesn't quite add up to me. It's a shot in the dark. So the same person went on to say that people don't seem to understand that, and we're going down a slippery slope, probably halfway already there. And if we don't stand up and protest and expand our message across America, we'll be just another one of what Trump calls the shithole countries. That's where he's leading us, which I'm going to go through when I get done reading all these, and I'm going to debunk their claims because they are not based upon fact. It's based upon, well, CNN and MSNBC told me to think this way. And then he went on to say no fears, or that's what one sign there, it said no fears. And there was another one that had a crossed out swastika. Another one said ice melts faster under pressure, which that could be potentially igniting violence towards ICE, maybe. Because the agents have seen a tenfold increase in violence, which isn't good. We can't be assaulting our federal officers. It seems pretty common sense, I think. Maybe not. Another person went on to say, we have a fascist government in America, abetted by a fascist media. A man named Brad, that's who said that. They were telling a media outlet, they said, and people need to have their voices be heard. Okay, that's fine. There's this idea that somehow that Trump stands for America. He stands for nothing like that. He stands for hate. He stands up for everything against the Constitution, everything our values are built upon. And he stands for himself and his friends and not for the great American people. I want to remind everybody that when Trump was president the first time, he lost over $1 billion at being president. So it's actually a bad business move for him to do that, because obviously you can't run your business when you're president. And so that part of it just doesn't make a lot of sense. You're right, Rachel. Facts versus feelings. That's exactly what the No Kings protest is about. And then a woman named Nicole told Fox News Digital part of her motivation for attending is that she is recovering from cancer and her husband was recently diagnosed with cancer, and says she received a notice their health insurance would be canceled by July 26th. Now, okay, so that one could be valid. However, she doesn't leave enough information for me to really like debunk it or not, because maybe if she had maybe her policy ran out, or maybe I don't know what the circumstances are. So I can't really elaborate too much on that. She says, well, we got a notice that we don't have insurance. Well, why? Is there a reason? I don't know. So I can't really say too much on that. And so someone said, so we can bomb random boats off the coast of Venezuela, spend all this money on ICE terrorizing people so we can take food and health care away from families. That makes no sense. Whoever said that, the same Nicole woman. Now I'm going to chime in on that one, because I have had enough of my friends die from drug overdoses. I've had enough. I don't want to bury not a single other friend. So if I have to watch Venezuelan drug boats get blown up in international water, I don't care, because don't bring your poison over here that kills my friends and kills my family and harms people in my life. Leave it. We don't need the fentanyl over here, because nobody's a what do you call those guys? The guys who give you drugs. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on this, but nobody has that caliber to be that person to regulate your drug intake. Everybody just guesstimates. So do we really want somebody doing that? No, not the dealer. You know who I'm talking about, Rachel. The person that gives, I don't know why I can't think of this name. The guy who stands over you, like when you have a baby and you're having a C-section or whatever, and you got the guy who's making sure you're getting the right pain meds and he's gauging it real closely, blah, blah, blah. It's that guy. It's going to drive me crazy. It's on the tip of my tongue and I just can't get it out. Anyway, we shall move on. This lady named Laura said, we just might as well bend over, adding that she's married to a woman is concerned that under Trump that marriage might not be valid anymore. Anesthesiologist, Rachel, that's it. You got it. So going back to Donald Trump in 2016 says he has zero issues with same-sex marriages. He's hasn't changed his mind since then. So, and the fact that he hasn't touched same-sex marriage, we'll get into it more here in a second, because there's actually Supreme Court decisions that support gay marriage. So that's not going to go anywhere. It's there. It's locked in. Until somebody challenges that law and wins, that's the law of the land. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So Fox News Digital watched as a man dressed in yellow placed an Antifa sticker onto a street sign as protesters walked by. Several users on social media posted signs mentioning Antifa, which Trump has designated as a domestic terrorist organization. So I'd like to see a lot of those guys get rounded up. Many of the signs at the protest use the term fascist to describe Trump, and several labeled Trump and members of his administration as Nazis. When asked if it's fair to call Trump a fascist, the same Laura lady, she said, I mean, he's doing shit that's outside of our Constitution. And then she said, he circumvented so many of our government's checks and balances that, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Not to mention making everyone who's in his cabinet, they have no experience, no intelligence, no light consistency. They're just a joke. So, yeah, which is absolutely false. If you go look at the pedigree of everybody in his cabinet, everybody's like Ivy League school graduates. Like, they want you to think that Pete Hegseth is just a Fox News contributor. But in fact, Pete Hegseth has done tours when he was in the military. He also is very well educated. He's an Ivy League grad. So for them to say he doesn't have the credentials is a complete ridiculous farce. As a matter of fact, the defense secretary that Barack Obama had no military experience at all. He was just a buddy of somebody's that got appointed to the position. So, you know, for them to attack that with Pete Hegseth, I think is ridiculous. They say they're referring to me as a king. I'm not a king. This is what Trump said. And asked about the protest and whether National Guard units would deploy to manage crowds, the White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson told Fox Digital, who cares? And I think that's the exact way. What's up, G-Bro? I think that's the exact way. If I'm Donald Trump, I'm going to look at this and go, whatever, who cares? It's all for theater. All these protests are for theater. Everybody wants to get on the news and, you know, say we're standing up to the orange guy. So going back to, I've gone through and I've debunked a lot of these theories of what these protesters are talking about. So, like I said, gay marriage has not been banned under Trump. Trump has asked for no legislation to ban gay marriage. In the 2015 Supreme Court ruling, it legalized same-sex marriage. That is still in effect. No one's touched it. No one's overturned it. It's still there. That's the law. In March 2025, Trump issued executive orders against law firms like Perkins Coie and Covington and Burlington. That's what they're complaining about a lot of this. Well, Trump restricted access to this law firm, which had represented political opponents. It's a law firm that a lot of liberals use. These orders revoked security clearances, blocked access to federal facilities, and barred agencies from doing business with them. Now, here's the reason why Trump is okay doing this, because this law firm is not a government entity. They're a private law firm. So for them to have security clearance at all is ridiculous. They shouldn't have that, because if they have clearance, they can get into more sensitive information that they don't really. What law firm needs sensitive information firsthand? These guys shouldn't have it. They shouldn't have those clearances. So I'm glad that got done. They shouldn't be able to just walk in a federal facility in unrestricted areas as they think that they need to. Now, there's the legal experts on the left are saying that this is that violates the First and Fifth Amendment protections, describing it as extraordinary acts of retribution. It is not. It is, you don't deserve. You're just a private law firm. You have no military, nothing. There's no reason for you to have security clearance. There's no reason for you to have a free reign of our government. So I don't. Why would you want a lawyer snooping around having free reign at everything? That just sets you up for getting screwed. Now, they also are saying that it's a misuse of justice for the January 6th defendants. So on January 21st, 2025, Trump pardoned nearly 1,500 individuals involved in the Capitol riot, including those convicted of violent assaults. Critics, including former prosecutors, called this a devastating blow to the justice system, arguing it undermines judicial accountability and the rule of law. Now, I disagree with that, because obviously Joe Biden, the list of people that he pardoned was complete ridiculous. But Joe Biden as president has that power, just like as President Trump has that power to pardon whomever he wants. So for them to say that that's a miscarriage of justice is a complete ridiculous statement, because the president has the power to do that. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. There's no law that's going to prevent them from pardoning people. So legal scholars have previously flagged these actions as unconstitutional, which the ones I've shown you already clearly are not. But that's a leftist trick. They'll get on TV and they'll say it's unconstitutional, and it'll get every single radical leftist out there going, Trump's violating the Constitution, when in fact he's not. If he was, I believe in the Constitution. I believe in constitutional rights. If he was violating that, I would not like that. If there's things he's doing that's in violation of law, I don't like that. When Trump tried to overstep a few of the court orders, even though he didn't agree with them, even though I didn't agree with them, it's the law. You have to wait until your appeal goes through, and then whatever happens out of that, you got to follow that ruling. So it's not I'm going to support Trump no matter what. It's, if he's violating the law, I'm going to kind of separate myself from that, because the law is the law, whether I like it or not. So these people are wrong in their thought process. The reasons why they're out there protesting, at least from the people that we've heard of, it's based upon half truth. So that's the problem that you have. Withholding congressionally approved funds, that's violating the principle of legislative control over spending. Now, that does hold some merit, and the Supreme Court did overrule some of that stuff. So they did tell Trump, like, hey, you can't just cut that funding off. But some of it he can. Now, trimming the fat, that's a whole other different situation. So, I mean, trimming the fat's different. Well, yeah. So my dad just brought up a good point about the pardons. So some of those people weren't even convicted. A lot of those people had no convictions. So I don't think a lot of people knew that, or the media wasn't telling you that. But there was a lot of people who sat in those jails for 3 years, 4 years without seeing a courtroom. So that's serious constitutional issues that the Biden administration should have been held accountable for. Their due process was heavily violated. So going back to the funding, some of it could have been trimmed, some of it, but to get rid of it altogether was going to be a tough task. Trump knew that, and they fought it in court. They won some, they lost some. Firing inspectors generals and federal prosecutors seen as they say it's retaliatory. If I'm president, I don't want a single person working for me that's not going to follow my plan, because my success is only going to be measured by the subordination of the people who work under me. If I have a couple rogue workers in there, it's going to hinder my progress towards my plan. So for them to cry about that, I think is completely ridiculous. Because if it's your company and you have somebody and you got this master plan on how you're going to increase your profit margins this year, but you got Joe Schmo down here going, I don't need to follow the plan. I'm not following the plan. And now all of a sudden, you're not reaching your target goals. And it's because of one or two bad apples. That's what Trump is doing. He's going in and saying, look, I have a plan. If you're not on the plan, get out. It's very simple. And other presidents have done the same thing, not as widespread as what Trump's done, but they'll get rid of people that don't agree with what the plan is. As a matter of fact, if you're a federal agent, you don't have to agree with the president, but you're still obligated with him as commander in chief and him as the head of the United States government. It's his plan. You gotta get on board. So we'll see, where that plays out. Refusing to comply with court orders. Yeah, Trump did that a couple times. That's wrong. He should comply with court orders, and just let the system play itself out. He using the Alien Enemies Act to deport individuals without due process. This is where I struggle, because I feel bad because the Biden administration screwed those immigrants. And we've talked about this on the show a lot of times, so I'm not going to get too far in depth in that. But the Bidens set those people up for failure. There should have been a process put in place that said, hey, when you get in the country, I don't care how you got in, but you've got 6 months to get to an immigration office and get documented. That should have happened, and it never did. The Biden administration said, just come in and figure it out. Here, we'll give you a bunch of government funding. And instead, he should have been including in that plan, and here's how you get your visa so you can stay here and work. And they never did that. And so now they're seeing the consequences of that, where Trump's going, nope, out. So pressuring the Ukraine to investigate political rivals, which led to impeachment proceedings. That was a Biden thing, so I'm not sure if they're getting confused. Biden is the one who even admitted on national television in an interview that, I'll let them know if you're not going to get rid of that prosecutor that's investigating Hunter, you probably aren't going to get any funding. Boom. Next day, prosecutor fired. So that's really not a Trump problem. That was a Joe Biden problem. So let's look into now who funds No Kings. Because how come the No Kings rallies are so well organized? They know exactly where they're going. They know exactly what they're doing. They know all this. So the number one funder, financier of No Kings is one other than George Soros and the Open Society Foundation. So through its Open Society Action Fund, Soros' foundation awarded $3 million in 2023 to Indivisible. Now remember that name, Indivisible. It's a group managing data and communications for No Kings. So they are a group that works for No Kings. So No Kings is an organization now. Since 2017, Open Society has granted $7.61 million to Indivisible, which is central to organizing protests. The next one is Tides Advocacy. Now, Tides is a very controversial group as well. In 2017, Indivisible received $350,000 from Tides. It's part of the Tides network, which supports progressive causes. So they do nothing but like the quasi-socialist, Marxist stuff. And their money trail is very well, you can look at it and find it and research it and see where all their money goes. It's always to something crazy. So then there's unions and civic groups. So key partners that are part of this include the American Federation of Teachers, imagine that, Service Employees International Union, Human Rights Campaign, League of Conservation Voters, National Nurses United, and Reproductive Freedom for All. So pretty much the usual suspects that would be involved in funding far left agendas. One name on there really surprised me. One of the major financiers of No Kings is Christy Walton. And you might go, well, who's Christy Walton? Well, she is... she's a major financial backer, an independent fact checker, and media. She's a part of a lot of stuff. Yeah, we had them here in Atlanta too, but she's part of Walmart. Christy Walton is one of the Walmart Harrises. So her donations support grassroots mobilization and civic engagement, aligning with the movement's goals and democratic accountability. So it's weird that she's doing that. I don't know. So Indivisible, going back to Indivisible, is the lead coordinator with co-directors Ezra Levin and Leah Greenberg, both with ties to Soros-backed initiatives. So even Indivisible has direct ties to George Soros. Over 200 organizations are involved, including the ACLU, an organization called Move On, Public Citizen, Common Defense, and United We Dream. So the movement is described as decentralized and community-driven, with local chapters like Franklin County continuing the political revolution and Indivisible North Quabbin leading regional events. I've never heard of either one of those places. Yeah, so the good thing about the No Kings rallies is it looks like they were very there was no real stupid things that happened at them. They kind of came and left and didn't really have an impact on anything. So that now that happened and it didn't really get a lot of like crazy exposure, I'm guarantee you the a lot of the leftists are going to go, well, that was a really crazy situation that we should have been able to really make some headlines with. I think Fox News gave it like 5 minutes of coverage. That was it for the whole weekend. And then, so transparency. So when we look at it, critics include, so Ted Cruz has been a big George Soros hunter. I call it hunter. He's a George Soros hunter. He's always on George Soros. He accused Soros of bankrolling the protests for political influence, prompting proposed legislation like the Stop Funder Act to investigate funding of extreme demonstrations. I hope that gets done because I think that the public in whole needs to know who funds all these. Because it does matter, even on the right side. If there's something like, I want to know who funds them, because that's going to tell me where their intentions are. If somebody on the super far right funds something, I'm going to go, okay, well, I know what that means. And if somebody on the left funds it, I'm going to go, yep, I know what that means. So I think it's important to know those things. Independent fact checkers note that while grassroots language dominates the movement's messaging, funding disclosures are limited and the full financial picture remains opaque. So there's a lot going on with that. Now, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about, there's a lot of lies out there about George Soros, just flat out misinformation. So I'm going to kind of sort that out. It's in 2015, Russia completely banned George Soros and Open Society Foundation. They labeled them a threat to national security. So no Soros in Russia. In 2021, opinion piece that was called China's Global Times, they referred to George Soros as a global economic terrorist. So China and Russia both do not like George Soros. Now, as we thought, everybody runs around and says, well, George Soros is wanted all over the place. Well, he's actually not. Soros is not wanted in Hungary, Turkey, or Pakistan, which is the ones that everybody says they are. While his foundations have been put under scrutiny to the point to where they can't really keep shop open in those countries, it's like kind of their way of pushing them out of the country without banning them. That's kind of what a lot of these countries have done. However, several countries have placed them under investigation. In September of 2025, the Department of Justice launched a formal investigation into Open Society Foundation under NSPM-7, alleging potential racketeering, fraud, and material support for terrorism. Legal experts call it a politically motivated attack on civil society. However, I don't believe so. I think George Soros is guilty of funding terrorism. If you actually go back and look at his history, he is guilty of funding terrorism. George Soros is one of those people that funds both sides of the fence. He likes to go over and throw money at Israel, and then he'll turn around and throw money at Hamas or Hezbollah. Like, he funds to keep that war going. He does this all over the world. He is a kind of a, I want to keep these wars going. Then obviously in 2015, Russia banned OSF and the Open Society Institute, labeling them threats to national security. There's no formal charges, but at the same time, George Soros is not going to go to Russia. He's not making it out. In 2018, Turkish authorities investigated OSF's local affiliates for allegedly supporting protest and civil unrest. The foundation voluntarily ceased operations under pressure. So he was basically kicked out of Turkey. Between 2017 and 2018, Hungary's government passed the Stop Soros law and banned investigators OSF's role in migration advocacy. So the OSF office relocated to its Budapest office to Berlin, Germany. So they abandoned that. Now, the crazy part about that is Hungary is the home country of George Soros. So they don't want him there. In 2017, Pakistan ordered OSF to cease operations, citing national security concerns. After negotiations, OSF resumed work under a new agreement. So they were basically punished, said, if you guys aren't going to follow instructions according to what we want, you can't be here. So they restructured and decided to follow this. I think there's a dead bird outside. But anyway, I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. So there was a very, very good article done by a guy named Daniel Beshear, and he is a writer for The Guardian. And he highlighted George Soros and dug into all kinds of stuff. So Daniel Beshear describes George Soros as a provocative and consistent intellectual committed to progressive ideals, but argues that Soros's failures reflect deeper flaws in elite liberalism and global capitalism. Soros, as a thinker, he's not just a billionaire. So the guy is very strategic. That's basically what Beshear's talking about, that George Soros is very strategic. In his 2018 Guardian article titled The George Soros Philosophy and Its Fatal Flaw. So Beshear figured out George Soros's plan has a flaw. Beshear emphasizes that Soros is not an out-of-touch plutocrat, but rather among the best of meritocracy has produced. He praises Soros's intellectual engagement with civic life, nothing that Soros has long advocated for open societies, regulated markets, and cosmopolitan values. The flaw is Beshear's central critique is that Soros and the liberal elite he represents mistakenly believed capitalism and cosmopolitanism were naturally aligned, and they are not. The decades since the end of the Cold War have demonstrated that without a perceived existential enemy, I don't know why I can't read, capitalism tends to undermine the very culture of trust, compassion, and empathy upon which Soros's open society depends. In other words, Soros's vision of a global capitalist utopia has been betrayed by the reality of wealth concentration, social alienation, and the erosion of democratic norms. So this plan that they're all trying to do right now has already failed. Soros's plan has already failed. The World Economic Forum's plan has already failed. Nobody wants to admit it yet, though. This is dead in the water. We just have to let it die out. So Beshear argues that Soros's class position prevents him from advocating the radical reforms needed to realize his ideals. George Soros is a billionaire. You guys want to tax billionaires? You think George Soros is going to let you tax him? No, he's not. And these facts, Rachel, they've been out here for a long time. It's just nobody looks at them. Nobody digs into these people. I wrote a whole entire chapter in From the Mouth about George Soros that already talked about this stuff. I did this 3 years ago. So this isn't new information. It's just nobody wants to tell the truth on the news. So do you think I want to sit here and podcast all day? I'd rather have a news outlet that I can trust, that I don't have to sit here and do a bunch of thinking for all the time. But the fact is, that's what we have. So I know you read the book. You're one of the first, well, after my dad, I think you were one of the second people to read the book. So Soros recognized the dangers of hyper-capitalism earlier than most, but remained unable to advocate the root and branch reforms necessary, because in order for George Soros to fully implement his plan, he would have to give up his own fortune. And he won't, because money is power. And if you're going to run a socialist society, somebody has to have the power. So that's kind of the basic gist of it. I mean, India is currently still has OSF under investigation because George Soros, because India has very strict laws as to where non-Indian NGOs can get their funding from. Well, they don't want George Soros putting money from his organizations into the OSF company affiliate there directly. So Soros was trying to backdoor it through another shell company into that organization. Well, India caught him, and the money was earmarked to interfere in their Indian presidential or the prime minister election, I believe. I have to go back and reread that, but they were interfering in the election, trying to get their candidate elected. And so that's a big deal. It's still being under investigation. I just checked on it with my Indian counterparts, and it still has no disposition yet. That company that is under investigation is called Aspada, ASPADA Investments. So if y'all get interested in looking that up, it's there. So let's talk about my final topic today. So I was sitting there, and as you know, I work on my Kentucky investigation. So I was sitting around one day, and I already made a TikTok about this, but I was sitting around one day and I was going, well, what would I do? Let's say I was going to run for governor of Kentucky, because Andy Beshear is done. He's going to be running for president, but he's termed out anyway. But if I was to run, what would I run on? What would I promise to the people that I fully intend on fixing for the people of Kentucky, especially Eastern Kentucky? Now, I'm not going to speak on Western Kentucky because I've done very little looking into that side of the state because there's so much corruption on the eastern part. So what would I do? So Eastern Kentucky faces some of the highest energy burdens in the state. And I think that topic is a very good topic to discuss there, because every single person in Eastern Kentucky has the same problem. The rising electricity rates, the aging infrastructure, and economic challenges compounding the cost of power for residents. It's choking. The energy costs in Eastern Kentucky is choking that area. So as of 2025, Kentucky residents pay an average of 12 cents per kilowatt hour for electricity. The average monthly electric bill is around $187, totaling approximately $2,244 per year, about 24% lower than the national average. So they're still lower than the national average. So why is everybody complaining? Well, here's why. Because your poverty level is lower than everybody else's. So that reality of that 12 cents per kilowatt hour might as well be 24 cents per kilowatt hour, because your cost of living is in your economy is so bad. So people live in poverty there. It's a problem. It's a huge problem. And on paper, when you're reading it, you're going, well, Kentucky's got one of the best kilowatt hour deals in the United States. No, they really don't when you look at it in real money versus just reading it on a statistic stat sheet. So you also have rate increases coming. And we know this. Debt to income ratio is a good example, Rachel. So Kentucky Power, the primary utility provider in Eastern Kentucky, filed a base rate increase request with the Public Service Commission in August 2025. The proposed increase is 14.9% for residential customers and 13 to 15% for commercial and industrial users. If approved, the new rates will take effect in the spring of 2026. So that's right around the corner, Kentucky. Be ready. You should be petitioning your lawmakers to tell them no. Now, the structural and economic challenges in that area, there's a loss of population and industry. That is a fact. The population levels of every community, every county is declining. Why? Everyone's fleeing because there's nowhere to work. The coal industry was going down, nowhere to work. Manufacturing didn't boom like they wanted it to, nowhere to work. So generally, you're gonna go sell dope, which is what a lot of it has. What's happened? Dope and prostitution has become a major industry. The region also faces frequent power outages, prompting Kentucky Power to propose investments in the wealthier, resilient infrastructure and expanded tree trimming to reduce disruptions. So we'll make sure we get those city folks taken care of, but out there in rural Kentucky, you're on your own. Better have a couple generators. So many households in Eastern Kentucky experience high energy burdens, meaning a disproportionate share of income goes towards utility bills. You should try. The idea is to get your utility bills to be a lower percentage of your total bill usage. So, I mean, Kentucky does have flex pay. They do have energy efficiency programs. They do have payment assistance and average monthly billing plans. But it shouldn't be like that. Instead of just giving out free money, which is what Andy Beshear has done, find business to go in the area. So that way people can go to work. There's a lot of able-bodied people down there that can go to work. Give them the opportunity to go to work. So another long-term scenario that they're talking about is more solar energy. I disagree with that. Me and my dad, we've talked about this several times. He has solar panels on top of his barn. And he says that it's not as efficient as what you would think it is, that every so often you're going to have to spend money to get your panels redone and your cells charged and all this stuff that happens. There's a lot of overhead costs there. So just to give you an example, the upfront cost is going to be around $36,000 for solar panels. Solar adopters in Kentucky can save up to $57,400 over 20 years. So that break-even point, you're not going to break even on that for 12.8 years. And then you're going to have to put more money in because, there's cracks in the glass because, it hailed or whatever. There's going to be maintenance costs. So generally, that's just if everything's fine with your cells and you can keep going. But there's going to be damage and you're going to have to replace them or fix them. So Eastern Kentucky's energy costs are rising due to economic decline, infrastructure, and regulatory adjustments. While rates remain below the national average, the relative burden on low-income households is significant. Utilities and state agencies are exploring both rate relief programs and renewable energy options to address long-term affordability, but we're a long ways away from perfecting that. Now, the coal industry is a problem in Kentucky. Now, I've had a lot of people argue with me about this on both ways, that they're destroying it and that, it's not as bad as what you think it is. So let's go back to my whole ideology on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. SDG 13, which for those of you who don't know, this is a system developed by the United Nations through a nonprofit organization in Switzerland that's ran through Marxist. So this is, I wrote an entire book about it called The Swiss Effect that tells you exactly who did it, how it happened, and why they're doing it. But while the SDGs do not name coal directly, they promote reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transitioning to clean and renewable energy, and improving energy efficiency. So the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has repeatedly called for a global coal phase out stating in 2022. So he said that in 2022. And he wants that phasing out coal is climate priority number one. He wants coal gone. You know what that means for Kentucky and West Virginia and Tennessee and everywhere else in that area, North Carolina? It means your jobs are gone. Your mining jobs are gone. That's what that means. So the powering, there's an alliance called the Powering Past Coal Alliance, launched at COP23 in 2017, and include 34 national governments that committed to phasing out coal-fired power plants. This is, for you, Kentucky, this is the most important thing, because your energy prices are out of control. And if they fully phase out coal mining in Kentucky, you guys are screwed. You're 100% screwed. And this is Andy Beshear supported this, just so you know. OECD countries to phase out coal by 2030. Now, if you read my book, The Swiss Effect, it tells you why the year 2030 is so significant, why they use it for everything. That is the globalization agenda target date. They want all of it to be put together by 2030, but Trump screwed it up, so it ain't going to get done by then. But they're still trying. They're hoping they can get Trump out of there at some point and get another puppet put in there that will initiate these plans. So they want all of the other countries done by 2040. So they want coal done, over with by 2030, completely done by 2040. So these targets also align with the Paris Climate Agreement. So for all of you liberals, you guys voting for the Paris Climate Agreement is destroying the coal industry for working class people. I don't know how more obvious I can make this. I know as soon as some liberals watch this, they're going to jump in my DMs and they're going to go, that's not right. But it's right. It's just nobody's put it together. No one has put all this together. Like, what is the factor? I know, because I look at Kentucky every single day, and I've already researched the plan. And every time I look into Kentucky, I go, holy shit. The United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals are everywhere here. They've been there. It's in effect. And your politicians have allowed it to happen. They know it's happening, and they don't do anything. So on the horizon, Donald Trump has done something to help you that I don't know that you know. So there's a company called Ramaco Resources. It's headquartered in Lexington. It's developing a critical minerals and carbon research initiative tied to its coal operations in Central Appalachia. So this is going to help the coal industry. While its flagship, it has a main mine. It's called Brook Mine. It's rare earth minerals. It's a project in Wyoming. The company is now leveraging its Eastern Kentucky infrastructure. There's something in the ground. Remember how we talked a few weeks ago? There's something in the ground that they want. We're talking about it now. I found the information on it. So there's a carbon-based clean mineral there that they want that's going to benefit the coal industry somehow. I don't know all the gist of it yet, but this is exactly what I was talking about that they're looking for. I finally found some more information on it. So Ramaco operates a carbon research and pilot facility adjacent to its coal assets, exploring how coal can be used to produce advanced materials like graphite, carbon fiber, and battery-grade graphite. So there you go, battery-grade graphite. What is every precious mineral have to do with anything in this world that everybody wants? It's because of batteries. We need batteries for electric cars. We need a bajillion batteries for our phones and our tablets and our laptops and everything else that we use over and over and over again on a daily basis. We're running out of those minerals, so they have to find more. Ramaco holds over 60 patents and exclusive licenses related to carbon and mineral technologies. The company is working with DARPA. Now, that's something I need to look into a little bit more, because I hear DARPA and I get sketched out. So for those of you who don't know, DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They are part of almost every conspiracy theory in the United States, just about. And other federal researchers to pioneer new extraction and processing methods. To me, DARPA screams defense contractor. So I'm going, why do defense contractors need to be developed with the coal industry? Why are they there? I don't know. Maybe somebody knows. Maybe there's an insider in Kentucky that knows a little bit about that. Let me know. So its CEO is a guy last name Adkins. So he's a member of the National Mining Association, which has actively pitched President Trump on designating metallurgical coal as a critical mineral, which will change its classification and make it more of something that they just can't get rid of. So that's under Trump's 2025 energy emergency order. So he's a Trump supporter and all that. Mr. Adkins is, which is fine. It's not, maybe it's not fine, but who cares? The guy's trying to bring the coal industry back to par and raise the standard. So interesting things. So coal-field counties like Harlan, Breathitt, Floyd, and Knott are experiencing some of the fastest population losses in Appalachia. Projections show Harlan County could lose 44.6% of its population by 2050, with similar declines in surrounding counties. Shrinking tax bases strain schools, clinics, emergency services, and making it harder to sustain basic community functions. So this is basic supply and demand. For those of you who don't understand how this works, your population goes down. Guess what? Tax revenue goes down. Guess what? You can't pay the massive amount of bills in your community because there's not enough tax revenue to pay those bills. So that's where towns get caught up in defaulting on loans because they used to have the population to sustain the payments to do it. Now they don't have that luxury anymore. So that's where towns can get bankrupt. Counties can get bankrupt. It's a problem, and you're seeing that this could happen in Harlan County. It's very likely it's going to happen in Harlan County. And yeah, you're right, Bonnie. A lot of those people are disappearing, and we're looking into that. That's a serious issue. So there's also the 2022 floods that killed 45 people and destroyed hundreds of homes, forcing many to choose between rebuilding in flood-prone areas or leaving the region. Governor Andy Beshear, who's worthless, he launched a higher ground housing initiative, building new neighborhoods on elevated land in Breathitt, Floyd, Knott, Letcher, and Perry counties. Despite progress, many residents still face land access issues with idle acreage on ridgelines and limited relocation support. That plan is not going to work because of the terrain of Eastern Kentucky. You can't just say, well, just build your house on high ground. It's not going to work like that. Yep, and you're right, Bonnie, and that's what you see happen at every disaster. They're going to come with their pennies on the dollar buyouts of your property and land. So Eastern Kentucky residents face rising electricity rates, aging infrastructure, and frequent outages. Kentucky Power's proposed hike in 2025 could deepen energy burdens for low-income households. It is going to have to get ready. Efforts to modernize the grid and expand solar access are underway, but unevenly distributed. This is not your long-term solution. You also have an agriculture problem. The Kentucky Farm Business Management Program warns of continued financial strain and declining profitability. So you're going to see farming take a hit. While Kentucky's overall arrest rate has declined since the pandemic, rural counties in Eastern Kentucky continue to report elevated arrest volumes. So why is the arrest rate going down throughout Kentucky, but in Eastern Kentucky in the rural areas, it's going up? Make that make sense. Maybe there's a problem that somebody should go look at. According to the Kentucky Department of Corrections, counties like Harlan, Pike, Bell, and Knox consistently rank among the highest per capita in jail bookings. So that's fact. Pike County. Just arrest everybody or kill them, whichever one you want to do. Economic hardships is limited limited access to treatment. So you have the opioid pandemic or epidemic. I guess we could call it a pandemic. It's pretty much a pandemic. The opioid problem, which results into the theft of property crime, domestic violences go up, increased probation violations. So just by having an opioid problem leads to so many other problems. So if you don't address that problem, you're never going to stop these problems. And the answer isn't, well, just give as much money as possible to ARC. That's not going to work. ARC's failed. ARC's trash. They're under investigation by so many people. Why would we give them money? Something honest needs to happen in Eastern Kentucky. So a Lexington Herald Leader op-ed from June 2025 criticized decades of empty promises from state and federal employees, citing failed projects like the Mountain Parkway expansion. Does anybody know? Has that gotten done yet? Those, I mean, I don't know if that's a lot for Pike County. What do you normally have? 30 plus officers? They need to take them over. Well, I guess if it's Pikeville PD, the PD is going to be different than your county. I think most of the problems are county-wide. I don't really hear anything isolated about Pikeville PD. But the Mountain Parkway expansion, which remains incomplete after 11 years, the Kentucky Wired Broadband Initiative, described as the fiber optic bridge to nowhere. I heard that that's a huge problem still. The College of App Harvest is a high-profile ag tech venture that failed to deliver promised jobs and investments. So that's part two. The coal severance funds was a disaster. Communities remained economically stagnant, even though it was supposed to spike economic prosperity in those areas. So there's a lot of failed attempts to do things, and then it just kind of, well, we tried. Sorry. Law enforcement oversight. So Eastern Kentucky has seen repeated controversies involving sheriffs, jailers, and police departments, including allegations of civil rights violations, excessive force, and improper detentions. The Northern Kentucky Truth and Accountability Project has launched public calls for information on fraternal order of police misconduct. Through this effort, although it's centralized in Campbell County and not directly tied to Eastern Kentucky. So there are organizations that are popping up that are looking into these things. So it ain't just me crying on TikTok every day. So a 2025 investigation by Louisville Public Media revealed that Senate Bill 89 could allow unrestricted pollution of groundwater, threatening rural drinking water systems concentrated on Eastern Kentucky. We were just talking about the water problem. I was talking about the water problem. Everybody's saying that there's no water, there's not enough water. So I'm still kind of collecting some information on that. But now that I'm seeing this initiative where the water's not even any good anyway, there's unrestricted pollution to the groundwater. They need to put those guardrails back in so people don't start getting lead poisoning and everything else you can get from bad water. So, well, see, I would like to agree with you on the mostly meth arrest out in the county, but I'm looking at my map of all of the missing people and murders, and I think there's a bigger problem. I could care less about the meth and the drugs. But when you start having bodies popping up everywhere, and this is just from 2020 to 2025, your murder rate's insane. Your missing people rate is insane. Like, that's where I would start. Go through the cold cases and collect all the information. Hell, I'll give everybody the information. But the problem is none of the high-ranking authorities want to talk about it. They don't even look at nothing. I've tried submitting stuff. They just kick it back. So that's a problem. I could pretty much tell you who murdered everybody in Pike County. But nobody wants to hear it. And that's a problem. But that pretty much sums up my show for the day. We're going to keep going. Next show will be on Wednesday. I need everybody to be safe out there. Of course, anybody in Pike County who has any information that they want to provide me, I love receiving the information. You can either get a hold of me on TikTok or stick something down in my comments, and I will get to you. But I'm out. Peace.